Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining me today on this webinar. My name is Dr. Robert Eagling. I've been with CellPress for just under 5 years. I joined in 2015 after being with the Royal Society of Chemistry for 15 years, heading up some of their flagship general chemistry journals, ChemCom, Chemical Science, Chemical Society Reviews. And I joined CellPress in 2015 to become the inaugural editor-in-chief of Chem, the first physical science journal launched by CellPress and sister journal to the world-famous Cell. So today, I'm actually going to talk to you a little bit about CellPress, a little bit about the CellPress, a little bit about CellPress's portfolio, some of the latest journals that are coming from CellPress, in particular from the physical scientist perspective, as CellPress moves to become an all-science leading publisher. So I will gradually move this presentation forward. So let's get started. Okay. So CellPress has been around for some years. Cell, I believe, was launched in 1974. Followed in the later years, I believe, in the 80s and 90s with the launch of Immunity and Neuron. More recently, that portfolio has expanded. So here you can see a picture of a number of the CellPress titles, whether they be in life sciences, whether they be the trends journals, the review-style journals, or, as I said, more recently, just in the last 4 or 5 years, we actually have the physical science journals edition. So Chem and Joule were the first ones introduced. Chem in 2016, Joule was launched in 2017. We also have Matter more recently and One Earth. I'll talk a little bit more in detail about these journals shortly. But these two most recent journals are still on their promotional access period on Cell.com. We have a number of open access journals as well. iScience has been with us now for a few years. More recently, I've been working with my colleague, Dr. Luke Batchelor, on Cell Reports Physical Science. And Christian Schultz, a colleague, has been working and leading the launch of Helion. And we also have the latest Trends journal, which is Trends in Chemistry. So this is a fantastic review journal. Some really inspiring, forward-looking perspectives from some of the leading scientists from around the world. As I say, there are we have a number of primary journals. So here you can just see some of them listed. I've mentioned a few before: Cell, Neuron, Immunity, Cell Systems, Structure. The list is growing, all very similar in their style, that we are looking to publish really outstanding research from the life sciences and physical sciences that will hopefully have a real impact in the future. These are complemented, obviously, by our Trends portfolio, which up until just a couple of years ago were predominantly in the life sciences, biological sciences, and other topics, including ecology, neuroscience, pharmaceutical science, etc. So full details and the list of all the Trends journals that we have can be located, obviously, from Cell.com. Okay, so as well as our primary research titles and our Trends journals, we also have a number of partnerships that we're working with societies to publish their journals. And as you can see here, we have some of the key examples that we have. Most recently, we've just announced an exciting partnership with YIPA, the Youth Innovation Promotion Association, a unit of the Chinese Academy of Sciences, to work with them to publish their journal, the Innovation. But we've worked with a number of partner societies across the life sciences for many years now, and here you can see some of those examples. Okay, so just to digress a little bit from some of the stuff, the journals that we have at Cell Press, just wanted to highlight some of the very valuable work that we've received from Eastern Europe over the last 10 or so years. So as you can see, year on year, the number of articles that we are receiving from these regions is growing, which is a fantastic trend, and long may that continue. And here you can see a graph of Eastern Europe, and those numbers actually indicate the number of citations that articles that we've published from Eastern European institutes have received since publication. So you can see these are some very large numbers, which is fantastic for us to see that we're getting some of the best work from in these regions and publishing it within our either premium journals or primary journals, or our trends journals, or society journals. And just to show you the breadth of the institutional research outreach that we have, you can see here just a huge list of institutes that we've been receiving research from over the years and publishing research from. And this is an ever-growing list. As you can see, a number of institutes from Poland and Estonia and Slovakia, and we move into other countries within Eastern Europe, and there are many, many more. Actually, too many to put on the series of slides that we have. So we are very grateful and appreciative from all the work that we receive from Eastern Europe, from our authors, and our help from our reviewers, particularly within these difficult, unique, and very challenging times. So I hope you're all managing to stay safe, and thank you for your ongoing and continued support. We're also delighted that you love to read our very important journals and some of the very exciting research that we publish across a number of these. As you would expect, our flagship life science journal, Cell, is very much at the top of the list of journals where articles have been downloaded from Eastern Europe. So thank you. And here you can see some of the others. At the moment, as you can see, these are all predominantly, well, they are all within the life sciences, broadly speaking. But maybe over the coming years, I'm sure you'll be able to see the growth in downloads for some of our other physical science journals, whether they be the primaries such as ChemJoule, Matter, One Earth, or from our open access journals that I'll talk a little bit about in a moment or two. But we will continue, obviously, to do our best to bring you the most relevant research for you to read and access as you see appropriate. So, obviously, a very important time in my life was Cell Press's decision to expand into the physical sciences. Obviously, the work that they've done in deciding that this would be an appropriate expansion for them was done before my time. but as you can see, I believe from just the 4 years that Chem has been around, hopefully you've been able to read some very exciting research within Chem, which was followed obviously just after the following year by my good friend Philip Iris, who I've worked with a number of years on Joule. And congratulations, Philip, for your third child just born recently. Just to go back to Chem, we obviously had a clear idea that we wanted to launch a journal that was going to be right up there publishing exciting research from across the chemical sciences. But there are lots of really great general chemistry journals already out there, which obviously I'm sure you're all aware of and read on a regular basis. So one of the key challenges was, how are we going to make Chem different? How are we going to stand out from the crowd? How can we try and bring something new to the field? And I had a vision of what that might be, and the format and structure, but obviously you hopefully you will have seen by now that we decided to link all research to 10 of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. These were set out in 2015 by the United Nations and agreed on by a number of countries, and clearly identified key challenges for governments to work on over the next, I believe, 10 to 20 years. I'm not 100% sure on that. So as you can see, there were 5 that were very clearly linked: good health and well-being, clean energy, clean water, climate, zero hunger, and then others which weren't so closely related but still had an element of chemistry that was in there. And I believe since launch, the journal has been very successful. We've been growing in submissions, growing in support. We won an award from PROS for excellence in physical science and mathematics. And I think most exciting about that award was when me and my colleagues who attended the ceremony was informed that this had not been achieved by any journal since the launch. It was predominantly a books award program, but Chem had managed to get in and be such an outstanding journal with such a great look that they had to give it one of these awards. So we were very proud of this. As I said, shortly after, we launched Joule. Philip Iris came also from RSC and launched Joule. And again, faced very, very similar challenges. There are lots of really great energy research journals from all the leading publishers out there. But how could, he really make Joule stand out? And one of his ideas was to, add, like Chem has a bigger picture box, Joule now has this scale and size box. We're looking at real life, whether this is actually going to, potentially have an impact in the future, because that's their goal, to really showcase potential energy solutions that could have an impact in the future. As you can see, again, Joule has been incredibly popular. It's been covered, papers covered in that article, in that journal, have been featured in some leading general and scientific outlets. I know Philip and his team work incredibly hard to ensure that he delivers to you the best research that is possible. And as a consequence of all these efforts, the Joule team also received a PROS award for what they'd achieved since their launch. So as you can see, there is a pattern appearing here that when you join CellPress, you have an ambition to create a journal which is going to be really challenging, and if not leading in the future, some of these most important fields of scientific research. We always like to discuss and see how our journals are doing by featuring research from the announced Nobel laureate. And as you can see, this recent year was no different. and both Kem and Jill were delighted that we've been able to publish papers from some of the Nobel laureates, one for their work in batteries, and here's just some of the examples. We've also now, since launch, published, in Kem, recent research from Professor Dan Faringa, Professor Fraser Stoddard, and we continue to try and strive to publish the most exciting and insightful research that we can from across the physical sciences in all our journals and life sciences. So most recently, I've been working with Dr. Steve Cranford. He joined from academia to be the editor-in-chief and spearhead of Matter, the next in our primary journal physical science launch program, obviously covering all things materials. So this was launched in July of 2019, and already this journal has been receiving some tremendously exciting papers from across material science. Again, Steve is a very creative editor, and he has his own ideas on how he's trying to separate Matter from other materials journals. One of these is his scale, the MAP scale, which really tries to map out the route of a new material from its inception, potentially right the way through to its potential application and impact and potential future impact on society. So if you are interested in all things materials, I would very much advise you to go read that. It's another fantastic read, and the journal is really going from strength to strength, covered on a regular basis in a number of outlets, from practical advances to things including mults and fish teeth, biomaterials, and even we got a mention to do with some coffee research that really was well covered in the global press. And finally, probably the most recent launch that we've actually had was One Earth, led again from our good friend and colleague Lewis Collins. And One Earth is really, I think, that's something that impacts us all, hoping to get a better understanding and address today's environmental grand challenges. So this is, again, a really exciting and incredibly topical journal, newest launched addition to the Growth in Physical Sciences. So again, if you have the opportunity, this is on its free access period still, so please do go and take a look, read some of the commentaries and research that Lewis and his team have managed to recruit, and it's really exciting and important coverage. As I say, when we launched CAM, I believe it was inevitable that there would be a partner trends in chemistry journal, and Tom joined us after his PhD and has done a phenomenal job in getting some of the world's leading chemical researchers to write forward-looking perspective-type articles on some of the most cutting-edge areas of chemistry and the chemical sciences. If you have a look in there, you will, I believe, will be, suitably impressed with some of the work that Tom has managed to do in such a short time. And I know at times my colleagues and I have always been a little jealous of his success in really getting some fantastic top-rate reviews into Trends in Chemistry since launch. Yeah, we'll be shortly. I believe this is the last slide or so before we move into how to get published, which will be the majority of the talk. Just to say that we have two open access journals, both not just about, these are high quality research journals with slightly differing bars to select the very best research. Cell Reports Physical Sciences is mainly just covering physical sciences, which obviously chemistry, physics, materials, energy research, engineering, etc. Whereas iScience covers the full breadth of scientific topics, right the way from life science, physical science, and anything else in between. So both are open access, and please do go and take a look at some of the research articles. They're both all very interesting and free to all to read. Just a quick note to finish this section again on some of our latest journals that will be being launched or have very recently just been launched. I've mentioned before the Innovation, which is a partnership with YIPA, but also our first issue of Patterns, our new data science journal, was recently published. My colleague Sarah. My colleague Nicola is working hard in these difficult times to launch MED, and to support MED we also have our open access medical journal, which is coming out around about the same time, Cell Reports Medicine, and a new partnership journal, and obviously a protocols for style protocols journal, which will cover tried and trusted protocols that can obviously be reused and applied on any time. It's heavily vetted and reviewed. Okay, so for the rest of this presentation, I'm going to spend talking about tips on how to put good papers together, and a little bit about how the editorial process works at Cell Press, but at most other publishers. I should say that, as you can see by the title of this presentation, the idea is to give you some tips to give you hopefully the best chance to put together a really good paper that will stand a chance of making it past the high levels that we have at Cell Press. But again, following these tips will help you write good papers for all different types of journals. There's no magic bullet really. The science is the critical part, and I think that's a question that you should always be asking yourself. Am I doing something which is interesting? Am I doing something which is exciting? Is this answering a question that people are going to be interested to read about? But let's just move forward. So before you write, I think asking yourself those questions again, which I just mentioned. Have you done something new? Is there something challenging in this work? Is this a hard problem that we're trying to solve? Because if you are trying to answer a hard problem, even if you don't solve the problem, every step that you make towards solving that problem is potentially going to be of interest to a broader, scientific readership. Have you provided full solutions? Well, if it's a really challenging problem, maybe you haven't, but you've made progress towards finding those solutions. And I think if you can answer yes to some or all of these, then you've got the basis to start building writing a research article for consideration to a number of journals. So how do you pick the right journal? Well, many years ago, the number one way that people would choose a journal would be because they know that their colleagues, their peers, their competitors, if you like, are going to be reading this journal. And nowadays, with everything being online, everybody can really pretty much read access to everything. But and people use other metrics. Is it open access? What is its impact factor? But, deep down, the key thing is you really want to be getting people who are in your field to be seeing your research, because that's going to help that field of research progress. Having said that, if it's the first time you're publishing in that journal, reading the aims and scope, just to make sure that your article does fit in with the aims and scope of that journal. Has that journal published papers in the past, and how have they been written? Well, go and try and have a look at some of those papers, particularly if they're on the topic that you're covering, and get a sense of, if there are some, obviously that's a good start, but also how they've been put together, how they've been written, that's a great place to really see if what you're about to start writing is going to be suitable for that journal within its scope, but also be read by people that you obviously want it to be read by. If you've managed to get a journal which is suitable, those editors who work at that journal should be able to understand and know what the important questions are, and that's what my team try to do on a regular basis. They're assessing and looking at the literature, look what's coming out, seeing what they're receiving, and then being able to make an initial assessment before sending it out for peer review, if they feel as though it is asking an important question and coming up with some really exciting and cool responses. Obviously, editors who work on those journals will know the field, will know key people who are working in that field, and be able to select suitable reviewers to handle your paper. But I'll talk a little bit about the editorial process a bit later on in this presentation. So just to decide why publish with Cell Press, well, obviously I'm biased, and I do believe that that it's very much a personal decision as to whether you like to have your paper handled by internal reviewers, internal editors, or handled by associate editors. Some people like scientists, other people like professional editors who are highly educated, PhDs, postdocs, had experience of research, but are very impartial and just looking at the science when we're making these decisions. We're very active about engaging with authors and reviewers. We're regularly at conferences. We're regularly talking to scientists. This is our number-one job. This is our only job. So we do our best to give you fantastic, really detailed decisions. Respond in as fast and as efficiently as possible. And we work together as teams to make sure that we are really serving you as authors and your papers, as we know that they're your babies, if you like, and you put a huge amount of time and effort in writing and formulating the research with your students to actually deliver the best service possible. And that's one of the things that we work very tirelessly on, getting the very best detailed reports so that you can hopefully work to improve your paper, and that final version that is hopefully published is the best that it can be. And then we work with our colleagues as well to look at how we can promote your work, whether it be to the scientific press or to the more general press, depending on the subject. And we cover with previews, press releases, social media interactions, and the like. So what makes a good paper? Well, obviously, my advice is always, it's a good story. It's a story. You've got a problem. You've done some research. You've managed to do some experimentation. You've got that experimentation. That's come up with some results, which can then feed into your discussion and conclusions and how you can take the field forward. but it's about that overall story, about how everything sits together in a logical manner and everything fits so that when the reader is reading it, they know exactly what you're looking at, exactly what the problem is, and the experiments, they can understand why you've done those experiments, the outcomes of those experiments, and how those results tie in and align with your discussion and conclusions. And that is probably some of the best advice you'll pick up today. It's making sure the whole thing runs as a story. So we as editors, reviewers, everybody who's incredibly busy can follow it from start to finish. I'll cover some of these points in more detail as we go through, so I won't talk too much, but title and abstract are incredibly important. Telling that story again, the flow of experiments, summarizing at points through the paper so people can take stock as they're reading it, and again, the language. This, I say this to everyone. If you're English as your first language or second language, it never hurts to, if you're just starting out, to get your papers read by colleagues just who aren't experienced in that field, but also because if they can understand it, then it's my belief that editors and reviewers should be able to understand it. Is it a clear, logical flow? Jargon. Some fields are very heavy on jargon, so you need to ensure that jargon is explained throughout the article. And if referees are spending time, picking up spelling errors through the paper, then that's taking their focus away from really being able to give an insightful and detailed review on how you could potentially improve the paper. So, these are just little things that do make a difference when you submit a paper. So one of my bugbears is always the cover letter. This is, when every paper comes into the office at Chem, this is the first thing that I read and my colleagues read. And it really gives us that initial impression of what the paper's about, so why it's a good fit for the journal. You don't need to reproduce the abstract, but you need to be able to, illustrate to me, tell me, the conceptual advances which you've managed to achieve within the paper and why these are exciting and why people in the general audience, not a specialized organic chemistry audience and organic whatever, but a general audience with a wider readership are going to be interested in seeing your paper here. And if there's controversy, then we should know about it. Obviously, you can let us know about reviewer suggestions, so you can tell us who will be good reviewers because they're experts in the field, and you can tell us if there are conflicts. You're working on a similar project to some other group in a different country, so it's inappropriate for us to choose them as reviewers, and we will do our very best to ensure that we maintain your, anything that you've asked us to do, we will do our best. And as a little aside, I remember a good friend telling me about a cover letter he'd received, and this was, he actually posted it on Twitter at the time, and I believe it was addressed to me, but it had been sent, the paper had been sent to Nature Chemistry, and I'd never worked for Nature Chemistry, but the actual address on that cover letter was to Utah, which is where obviously Professor Peter Stang, the chief editor of JACS, works. So it just shows you the importance of getting the address in the cover letter to the right person, getting those facts in there, and making sure that you really do a great job in trying to sell the potential impact and conceptual advances within your paper. Okay, so writing the paper. Make sure that you try to keep the language as simple as possible, always referring to the journal guidelines, 3 sets of journal guidelines, the referee guidelines, the author guidelines, and the ethical guidelines. Author guidelines are there to help you put the paper together. You know, it suggests you look at the referee guidelines because then you clearly understand what we're asking referees who are going to be looking at your paper to comment on. And the ethical guidelines are basically a big list of everything that you should avoid and not do when putting your paper together. Plagiarism, data manipulation, fabrication, you know, selective referencing. All these things are clearly laid out in our, you know, ethical guidelines. And so, you know, take some time to read these before you start writing and putting your paper together, because starting from that firm basis and understanding what is required is a very important step in coming out with something that is going to be useful for you. Titles are very important. You know, we are actively looking to get titles which are very succinct. Many times I'll see a title of a paper, and not picking on inorganic chemistry, but you know, that title could be the synthesis of an UPAC perfectly named compound, which could be 3 sentences, which no one is ever going to search for, no one is ever going to look for. So you want to describe what's in there, but in a succinct way, maybe have some keywords which are discoverable through searching or Google or things like this, because we're all busy. So we're wanting to be able to discover your paper, because it's only when we discover your paper that we can read it and maybe give you due recognition by building on the results that you've managed to attain and report. So, you know, discoverability in today's day and age, where there are so many, there are many journals and many research papers being published on a daily, hourly basis from different publishers. The abstract needs to be brief and to the point. What have you set out? What have you achieved? And make sure that it's interesting, understandable, and anybody who wants to get into your paper will get a snapshot of what you've reported in here. And if there are important findings that you've managed to achieve, make sure that they're included in there. You know, again, this is one of the most important parts of the paper, because it's the first thing that you know, editors read, reviewers will read, because it outlines the paper and what you've managed to achieve. So moving into the introduction again, where does the field stand? So you're going to talk about the field, what's been achieved, you know, who are the key players in the field. You know, you're making sure that you're citing the seminal papers, the ones that are really important to you being able to tell your story of your research and experiments and your results. What's the problem? What's been achieved? What are the limitations on you know, what's been achieved, and how your work is looking at those limitations and actually looking to identify you know, the potential solutions that are out there. So it's really about putting the lie of the land into your paper, so that the media editor and the reviewer really has a very clear understanding about what's going on. I will always read an introduction, because that will tell me what's gone on in the field previously, and you know, the abstract is illustrating what you've achieved. That will also be mentioned usually as you're summing up your introduction before moving to your results. So by the time I've read cover letter, introduction, and your abstract, I'm now starting to get a clear picture of your achievements and the advances that you've managed to come up with. And that will help me formulate my decision on how I should proceed. Again, the results, clear and easy to understand. You lay out graphs and charts so that, you know, people can clearly see what you're trying to illustrate. You don't want to have lots and lots of data presented, so it becomes very difficult to understand what you're trying to present. If something unexpected has come up, most definitely, you know, cover that and try to use further experiments to maybe try and explain these findings. And it really lays out what you've managed to come up with from the experiments that you've done. So again, make sure that everything is try to make sure everything is written clearly. There is legends that are describing individual figures. Again, all things that, you know, when you think about it, are quite straightforward, but it's you know, many times people don't follow such things, and it just becomes very difficult as editors, as scientists, as reviewers, to really get a hold of and understand what you've achieved. As I say, some of this I've already covered, so I'll just move on in the interest of time, as we've still got a little bit to go through. Again, so the discussion. So you've put your experiments down, you've put your results down, and now what do they mean? So you're now trying to discuss your results in the discussion, looking back at what's already been published and how you see your work is moving that field forward. And what's the advance here, and what are your conclusions, and that will be coming up shortly. What are you going to say? So it's really tying up everything, and again, a very important part of the manuscript that will come together if you've done the other aspects of writing the introduction, doing and reporting experiments accurately, and planning those experiments and tying in all the results that those have provided you with. Okay, now references. Now this is one of these fields which, you know, can be a bit of a minefield, political minefield, because obviously you want to cite the right people, and you want to, but you need to cite them for the right reason. You need to cite them because their work that has been done is directly relevant to your research. Obviously, you don't want to have too many. You don't want to have a research paper which has like thousands of references. So, you know, really being selective and choosing the most important references that fit with your article and your discussion. Make sure that you know what's in those papers. Many stories about people who cite a paper for the wrong reason, and then that actually can get picked up, and maybe other people will cite it for the wrong reason, or people will pick you up for misciting it because it actually has nothing to do with what you're trying to you'll talk about. So you need to know what's in there. Obviously, we know that the research you're doing in your group is very, very important, but you know, if you have a field that you're working in, then there are going to be other people who are making relevant contributions, important contributions, so it shouldn't always be just your research timely, and excuse me 1 second. Your research should be, you know, timely and important, and fit in. Your citation should fit into the overall story along with others. And again, that fits with the international, you know, geographical spread of those references. I'm sure if you're in a large field, then people will be citing you from. People will be working in these areas from many different places around the world. And so references are a very important topic, and you know, you should try to, as I say, avoid selective referencing, too many self-citations, and some other guiding principles around references. One of those areas at the end of the article, acknowledging key people, I always think it's, you know, mildly amusing when you actually forget to thank some of the most important people. So, you know, you've spent all this time and effort on putting your research paper together, and then at the end of it, you've forgotten to thank the people who funded you, or the people who provided you with support or proofread your paper, or anything that you believe that doesn't warrant that they obviously haven't really contributed as an author, but you know, whether it be proofreading or whether it be, you know, that you've had some interesting discussions with them, you know, giving them thanks at the end, I think is, you know, is good good scientific practice and a good thing to do as a scientific citizen to really acknowledge the whoever it is that's funded or helped you put the article together. Okay, so the last part of the presentation is all about the editorial process. So here you could see a manuscript journey. I will very quickly look at this, but I think we're going to touch on a number of the aspects in the following slides. So for us at Chem, which I'll use as the example, we get a paper in and I will pass that to my editors if it's in their areas of expertise, and they will review that. And that typically means that they're going to spend time reading the paper. We read every paper. They're going to spend time looking to see what's been done by looking at the references, looking at Scopus to evaluate other papers that maybe haven't been cited, that maybe are reporting something very similar, and really get a sense of what the paper is all about. And the most important thing is, what is the conceptual advance that they're reporting? There are many journals in this world, many different levels, all have different expectations. So just because your paper comes to Chem and it doesn't get accepted to go out to external review, we reject it without review, that does not mean it's a bad paper. It just means for our journal, we don't believe that it's suitable for whatever reason. Now, at that point, if you've been unlucky, we could offer you an option to transfer, and most recently, many of our transfers go right the way to some of our other journals, such as Cell Reports Physical Science, where my colleague will look to see if they match their expectations, or, iScience to see if they match their expectations. If not, then they'll be rejected. If yes, then we can transfer them over and they will handle your paper. So you'll still be retained within that Cell Press, that grouping of journals. If you're very lucky and you're one of the 10, 15% of articles that we really like, then we'll send you out for review. Obviously, we're sending to a minimum of 3, sometimes 4 reviewers, crystallographic expert reviewer on every paper containing crystallography, for example. And we ask them to look at a number of different things based on their views and our interpretation of the paper. The editor will make a decision on how to proceed, and I'll talk a little bit about that in the coming slides. But as I say, we take this incredibly important, this whole manuscript journey, and this is the key part of what my team and I do on a daily basis, is really trying to do the best that we physically can on every research article that is submitted for consideration. So I believe I've probably covered all of those points in discussing that, but I mentioned previously about managing promotion of the work following publication, and obviously we're managing the peer review process from interactions with reviewers to interactions with authors. My team and I, we are not the editors in ivory towers whose sole responsibility in life is to make authors' lives hell. We're there to try and do our very best to get the best papers in and to provide advice, feedback, open for discussion on research articles that we receive on a daily basis. So, we are always open for discussion, and if you feel as though you would like to chat about a paper, you can obviously contact us at any time. So after our initial evaluation, as I say, we will let you know if it's not a strong candidate, and we will try to give you some basic reasonings as to why we don't feel it's suitable for Chem. And obviously this goes for other, journals within the Cell Press portfolio. If we believe that this has potential, if we like the story, if we think the conceptual advances is exciting, if we think the research is exciting, I ask my team, so when they look at papers, so they look at those papers, read those papers, do you find them interesting? Do you find them exciting? Is there something in there that you actually believe that you would like to read about? And therefore, that's probably a good place to start for us as editors as to whether that article should be sent for, for peer review, or whether we don't believe it's suitable for consideration. And that's when we will start moving the article through. On occasions, if we feel as though a little bit more work is done, we will get back to the author, and this is why it's important that our editors, our PhD or postdoc research experience, because they will actually spend time discussing with the authors potential ways in which they could maybe elevate the paper slightly so it reaches the level that we're looking for. We've had great success with this approach as well, because we're really opening a dialogue with scientists. Again, what we ask reviewers to do, well, is the quality of the data there. Does it support the conclusions that they're reporting in the paper? Key question with a general journal or a more general journal is, who will it be of interest to? Is this more interesting to the people who work in that field, so it's a bit more of a specialized field, or could it be of interest to a broader audience? So all of these points we're asking the reviewers to consider on a daily basis. And we will select reviewers based on their expertise, but also their expertise, but their background, and obviously if they've not been highlighted by the authors as having a potential, conflict, and trying to get a good geographical balance of reviewers. So for a US paper, we may look to have European or Asian reviewers, and vice versa. For Asian papers, we could have European or US reviewers, trying to get a balance between, as best as we can, between male and female scientists as well, to help with diversity within the peer review process. But critically on that side, it's the editor that makes the overall decision based on their interpretation and the responses of the reviewers. If you're a reviewer and you're worried about it's being a bit too close, here are a few things to consider. If it's a conflict of interest, have you worked together? Have you run together? Have you got students from that person's group in the lab that has previously been on that paper? So some of the things to consider when you're looking at whether or not you're suitable to actually be a reviewer for a certain paper. Obviously, it's very important that you maintain confidentiality. What we don't like to hear is we go to a conference and the reviewer is telling the author, "I just read your paper." We like, this is confidential. We will make sure everything remains confidential. So we believe as editors you should do the same. Using it as an opportunity for training, getting maybe some of your experienced grad students to actually, do an initial view and then discuss it, group meetings, and then, the PI will send it in. Again, that's great, great training, because we're looking for the next generation of scientists to become reviewers, because this is science is growing. There are more and more papers, so we need an ever-growing trained group of reviewers to help with these review process. Make sure you're always constructive in the tone that you use. Do it as efficiently and as quickly as possible, but not to the detriment of the review that you are providing. And that's the most important thing. The outcome of peer review is the quality and depth of reports that we get. That's the most important thing, in my opinion. So as I said, the editor's opinion, we take all the comments in, our own assessment of the article. We're looking at what's already out there. and we're then looking to make a decision. So is it going to be, this is great, few minor tweaks, is there more experiments to do, but we genuinely believe that there is a basis of a very good paper, or is it a reject? So we're weighing all these things up in our mind, and that's how we come to, a decision about how we'd like to proceed. And as you can see, it's smaller issues. We can push these with a pending minor revisions. Maybe the article has a very sound basis, but there needs to be some additional work to really elevate it. New experiments to prove things, new controls, etc. So we will ask you in a revised form. And sadly, if we just don't believe that there is enough in the paper following the responses from the reviewers, and that a revision is not really going to make it so that paper is going to reach the level that that we're obviously targeting, then obviously we will reject. And that doesn't necessarily mean that your paper is going to be rejected, because as I said previously, at Cell Press we have a number of other journals which as criteria may not be as stringent and as tough as that at Chem, and so there are opportunities for you to potentially transfer. Once you get your letter, try to respond and address all the comments point by point. The easier it is for an editor to understand how you've addressed the points and what you've done and how it's all laid out, the better and simpler it will be for me to assess and then to decide whether I believe it needs further external review from some of the original reviewers, or whether I feel comfortable making the decision by myself, and that again goes back to the experience, knowledge, quality, and education of the editors as to whether they feel comfortable in what level they feel comfortable assessing revisions. And if you don't think you can achieve something, you can call, you can email, and the editors will be more than happy to discuss what's gone on, and also discuss maybe coming to some agreement about what should and shouldn't be done, maybe some things are beyond the scope of the paper, etc. So, please, again, do feel free to open a discussion if you have some concerns about some of the revisions. Again, I'm pretty sure I've covered most of this. So I won't stop as we are just a couple of minutes from the end and opening up some questions. Now, if you get a negative response, you obviously can speak with the editor. You can obviously discuss things with us, but there is an opportunity to potentially submit a rebuttal detailing why you believe that something has not gone right within the peer review process. And by this is like a detailed response to the concerns of the reviewers, and we're sticking to science here. We're not interested as editors whether you believe that the scientist, the reviewer, the scientist who's taking providing comments is an idiot or whatever. We are strictly here to look at the science and the scientific reasoning behind why you believe that something has gone wrong, and it's only if we feel that there is a case to be answered here that we could open up the paper again. We could send it back out to the original reviewers with your concerns, or we may enlist the help of new reviewers to help us with that decision. Obviously, the transfer process is something that all publishers have in place, and we at Cell Press have a number of fantastic options for you to possibly transfer to you. This is always up to you, and the author always has the decision. We will offer you many things. Obviously, it will be faster and more efficient rather than go through the whole process again. But this is an author-driven process, and if you don't feel it's right for you, then then so be it. Obviously, if you'd like to discuss the matter with the editors of those receiving journals, again, we will be delighted for you to do that, because if we expressed an interest, we will try our very best to make it happen, and so your work is published in Cell Press titles. After acceptance, we're working very hard to promote your paper and try to get it out there as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible, and so that people want to read it, and we try to get coverage. We do interviews, we get covered in the popular press and the scientific press, so we don't stop working once we've received and your paper has made it through the peer review process. We're still working to try and ensure that the whole process is not finished until we've highlighted the content that you've published with us. Just a couple of slides. Again, we're doing our very best at Cell Press to innovate. We have our new website and that went live recently. Cell Picture Show, many other things, videos where scientists are talking about their research. I think we have our 360 videos, so this is where you can have a figure which comes alive within the paper, and scientists are talking through what's actually within that figure, because it's very complicated and it helps to, explain the science behind that. And Sneak Peek is another service that we offer, that you can get your article put on the Sneak Peek page, and so people can see that your paper is good enough that it's been sent out for review at one of the Cell journals, and so they can get a sneak peek of it pre-review, or while review is taking place, I should say. And obviously STAR methods to make sure that all everything that's experimental in our life science journals is reproducible, transparent, accessible, and can be done wherever. Cell Mentor, again, another innovation, and I'm just rushing through these slides quickly. As we're up, we're always looking to interact with the community. We have a host of cell symposia. We've just had one in energy. We've got another one in catalysis coming, lab links on a number of different topics around the world, bringing communities together, and our webinars such as this and scientific webinars. I believe that is about it. If you would like to get any information, just to highlight that all the information from Elsevier, from Cell Press, from Lancet on COVID-19 is freely available on these sites. So please do take a look if it's something of interest. And with that, if you're interested in anything, any of the journals, please recommend to your library. If you want more information, cell.com, and I believe I'd be happy to try and answer questions, and there are a lot of questions. Bear with me one second. Are there any guidelines for writing a good paper in general? I just believe that if you follow the basic rules that I've outlined here, then they should apply to any journal. I do believe that there is a resource center on Elsevier, and I will obviously get I will try and follow up with you to give you the details, but that has a lot of this information in about how to write papers and how to do things with respect to putting papers together. Usually it's like the last slide on the presentation, but it's not here, so we'll make sure we get some information to you to give you those details, as it's a great resource, and a lot of this information can be found in there, plus other things on how to write good papers. There was also some editorials on writing papers, I believe, by people like George Whiteside in some other journals some time ago, and I believe some other publishers also have like how to do papers, which are, how to put papers together for their particular journals. There are such things as predatory journals, and these are things which are there basically to, I should say, I believe there's a list of predatory journals kept together by, I believe, a librarian in the US, and he's regularly adding to this list. But there are a number of things that you can do to see if there is if it's a predatory journal. If you're looking at them and there are no papers published or not very many papers published, if there is no real editorial board, if the website doesn't look as though it really looks like a journal website with information for authors, etc., etc. These are the types of things that you should look out for when trying to see if it's a predatory journal, because they're effectively as just in this to try and get some fees from you to obviously publish a paper in a journal which is just not there for any other purpose rather than to just take cash. How long does it take to evaluate an article? Really, it depends a great deal, and it depends on the complexity of the paper. It depends on the field. Some papers you can easily read the introduction, abstract, and covering letter, and have a real sense of that article doesn't meet your expectations. Sometimes, the devil may be in the detail, and so you have to go into more detail, looking at what's already out there, what the through Scopus or other resource like this. We use other resources. I know my colleague uses Reaxis when he's assessing organic papers, so he gets a sense of what's already been done and reported in the literature from an organic chemistry perspective. So it really just does depend on the quality and nature of the quality of the paper and the subject. So it could be anywhere from 30 minutes to a few hours, depending on the nature of the article. Questions are coming in. How do we summarize a review paper result? I guess that's what they mean by how do we decide whether a review is I'm interpreting that as a review is suitable for consideration of the journal. If that's the case, then we simply have some guidelines that we try to adhere to. The topic itself, is that too focused for a general audience? Is it better suited to a more specialized journal? But more about the importance of the topic, and also the credentials of the author. We're looking for someone who has got a proven track record within a field, published in journals, and is the review authored by that person is going to be picked up and read and used, because people will appreciate the field being reviewed by that person, because they have the right credentials and background to actually do an appropriate job in that. And that's what we're looking for. Most of our reviews are invited only, but we do receive a number which are unsolicited, that if we believe they match those credentials, then we will send them out for review. What are the things that should be avoided during the publishing process? I think, well, if it's from the perspective of writing papers and doing a good job at writing or a paper, that you should avoid doing anything which is stated in the guidelines, ethical guidelines, because all of these things are just not good for science, for publishing, but also for your own status as a scientist. You know, if you become renowned in the field for doing things that you shouldn't do, it's very hard to shake that kind of from you. It's very difficult to shake that kind of. It always stays with you, if you like. So I believe it's very important that you follow the guidelines ethically, and you do a good job at writing a paper. And when you're going through the review process, you just try to be as genuine and as if you're a reviewer, genuine, honest, and follow the review guidelines. And if you're that author receiving those, just do your best to, you know, take it on the chin and try to come up with a way to maybe, you know, get the paper to that right level, or alternatively submit it, you know, take it on the chin and submit it to another journal. What else have we got here? I would like to know what is editorial, what are the main reasons for such rejection? So editorial rejection, basically, this is the assessment by the editors. It's something that we do not take lightly. It's something that we spend a lot of time doing because, as I said in the presentation, this is something that you've spent a lot of time on. It's your baby, if you like. You've directed your students into doing, you know, seminal, you know, what you believe is really, you know, great research, and come up with a story. That doesn't mean if we editorially reject your paper, this is a bad story. It just means that for the level of journal that we believe we are trying to be, so we're trying to report, you know, general, very exciting, interesting findings which are going to be of interest to a broad field of readers, we just don't think it's suitable. So we're looking at what the advance is. So thinking about it in a way that if you're using a similar method to what someone has done before and maybe improved something slightly, that could be a really nice paper, but it's not for us. So there are many other journals out there that would be very much interested in receiving a paper at Cell Press. If it's scientifically sound work, you know, we have Helion, you know, with tougher restrictions on quality. You know, we have iScience and Cell Reports Physical Science. So it could appeal to many other journals. But what we're looking at is maybe ways in which people are thinking differently to approach a problem, or what there's you know, discovered something unique, which is really exciting, which has not been kind of thought about previously. It's all about the conceptual advance over previous work, which is the key reason. So if you've got a slightly better gas storage performance, well, we're not really that interested. If you've approached the situation by having a different catalyst, or a completely different porous material, and got really interesting results, then there may be a chance that we may be interested. So it's all about the story, the science, and looking really at what's been done before, or conceptually what's been done before, and then trying to work out whether it's suited. But it takes a long time for us to actually do this, to make sure that we are fair and honest, and uphold all the guidelines that us editors follow on a regular basis. I believe I may have time to answer one last question before I finish. So I'll just I'll just I'll just answer this question. When we reject a paper, do we give reasons? And do we give feedback and improvement? So the answer is it's a case-by-case basis. I think if we're sending a rejection following reviewer comments, there will most likely be suggestions on how the issues within the paper and how the paper could be improved to make it suitable for a different journal. I think When we're editorially rejecting it, we will always give a reason, but not always give reasons in which or how the paper could be improved. So it really is a case by case basis, and but we do take time, and if we contact you after you've submitted a paper where we think there is merit, we will of course try to get you to potentially listen to some suggestions and maybe augment the paper so that we can improve. It can be improved and hopefully sent out for a review. And finally, the reviewers don't have to be related to the Cell journal, so we're just looking for experts in that field of research to really take it upon themselves to give an honest, impartial view of the results for all those reasons which for all those reasons which I discussed in my presentation. And with that, I'd just like to finish. I hope you found it useful. I've been looking at some of the comments, and obviously we'll take those comments on board. Thank you for tuning in. You'll be able to find my email address on the cell.com website, and so if you want to discuss a paper or have any other burning questions, I'm sorry I couldn't get through them all, but there is in excess of 100, and I only have a short amount of time to go through those. So please do forward them to me, and I'll do my best to answer them. Stay safe in these very unique, challenging, and difficult times, and thank you for listening, and goodbye.